Welcome. Today, we're diving into the world of lease agreements. Whether you're renting an apartment, leasing office space, or considering a car lease, understanding the basics of a lease agreement is crucial. This video will break down what a lease agreement is, why it matters, and what you should look out for before signing one. We'll also explore the key elements that make up a typical lease and how these documents protect both landlords and tenants. Let's start by defining exactly what a lease agreement is and why it's so important in everyday transactions. A lease agreement is a legally binding contract between two parties, the lessor, often called the landlord, and the lessee, or tenant. This document outlines the terms and conditions under which one party agrees to rent property owned by another. Lease agreements are used for various types of property, including residential homes, commercial spaces, and even vehicles. The agreement specifies details like the duration of the lease, payment terms, and responsibilities of both parties. Understanding this definition is the first step to navigating leases with confidence. Every lease agreement involves at least two parties, the landlord and the tenant. The landlord is the owner or manager of the property, while the tenant is the individual or business renting the space. Sometimes there may be additional parties, such as property managers or guarantors, but the core relationship is always between the lessor and the lessee. Understanding who is involved helps clarify each party's rights and obligations under the lease. Lease agreements come in many forms, depending on the property and the needs of the parties involved. The most common types are residential leases, commercial leases, and vehicle leases. Residential leases are for apartments or houses, commercial leases cover office or retail spaces, and vehicle leases are for cars or trucks. Each type has its own unique terms and legal considerations, but all share the same basic structure: a contract outlining the use of property for a set period in exchange for payment. A lease agreement typically includes several key elements. These are the names of the parties, a description of the property, the lease term, rent amount and payment schedule, security deposit details, and the responsibilities of each party. It may also include rules about property use, maintenance, and what happens if either party breaks the agreement. Knowing these elements helps you spot a comprehensive lease and avoid surprises down the road. The duration, or term, of a lease agreement is one of its most important features. This specifies how long the tenant can use the property. Lease terms can range from a few months to several years, depending on the agreement. Some leases automatically renew, while others end on a specific date. Understanding the lease term helps both parties plan for the future and avoid misunderstandings about when the agreement ends. Rent is at the heart of any lease agreement. The document will clearly state the amount of rent, when it's due, and how it should be paid. Some leases specify late fees or penalties for missed payments. It's important to read these sections carefully to avoid any financial surprises. Clear payment terms protect both the landlord's income and the tenant's rights. Most lease agreements require a security deposit, which is a sum of money paid upfront by the tenant. This deposit protects the landlord against damage or unpaid rent. The lease should specify the amount, how it will be held, and the conditions for its return. Understanding the rules around security deposits can help avoid disputes when the lease ends. A good lease agreement spells out who is responsible for maintaining the property. This includes repairs, regular upkeep, and sometimes even landscaping or utilities. Typically, landlords handle major repairs, while tenants are responsible for minor maintenance and keeping the property clean. Clear maintenance terms help prevent conflicts and keep the property in good shape. Lease agreements often include rules about how the property can be used. These might cover things like noise levels, pet policies, smoking, or alterations to the property. Following these rules is essential, as breaking them can lead to penalties or even eviction. Always read this section carefully to ensure you can comply with all the requirements. A lease agreement should explain what happens when the term ends. Some leases automatically renew, while others require a new agreement. The document will also outline how either party can terminate the lease early and what notice is required. Understanding these terms helps both landlords and tenants plan ahead and avoid last-minute surprises. Lease agreements are designed to protect both parties. For tenants, the lease ensures the right to use the property as agreed, while for landlords, it guarantees payment and proper care of the property. If disputes arise, the lease serves as the primary reference for resolving issues. That's why it's so important to have a written, signed agreement in place. Most lease agreements contain standard clauses, such as late payment penalties, subletting rules, and procedures for handling repairs. Some may include unique terms tailored to the specific property or situation. It's important to review all clauses carefully and ask questions if anything is unclear. Knowing what's in your lease helps you avoid misunderstandings later. Did you know that many lease terms are negotiable? Before signing, you can discuss rent, lease duration, maintenance responsibilities, and more with the other party. Negotiation is especially common in commercial leases, but even residential tenants can sometimes request changes. Don't be afraid to ask for terms that better fit your needs. It's essential to read the entire lease agreement before signing. Take your time to review every section, and don't hesitate to ask for clarification on anything that's unclear. Once you sign, you're legally bound to the terms, so understanding your obligations and rights is crucial. If needed, seek legal advice to ensure you're making an informed decision. Sometimes, changes need to be made to a lease after it's signed. This is done through amendments or addendums, which are written documents that modify the original agreement. Both parties must agree to these changes in writing. Keeping all amendments with the original lease ensures everyone is on the same page. Breaking a lease means ending the agreement before the term is up. This can have serious consequences, such as losing your security deposit or facing legal action. However, some leases include clauses that allow early termination under certain conditions, like job relocation or unsafe living conditions. Always check your lease for these details before making a decision. If a tenant violates the lease, the landlord may begin eviction procedures. The lease will outline what constitutes a violation and the steps for eviction, such as written notices and deadlines for correcting the issue. Understanding these procedures helps both parties know their rights and responsibilities if problems arise. Subletting means the tenant rents out all or part of the property to another person. Not all leases allow subletting, and those that do often require the landlord's approval. The lease will specify the rules for subletting, so always check before making arrangements with someone else. Assignment is when a tenant transfers their entire interest in the lease to another party. This is different from subletting, where the original tenant still has some responsibility. Assignments usually require the landlord's consent and must be documented in writing. Make sure you understand the difference before making any changes. While the terms are often used interchangeably, a lease and a rental agreement are not the same. A lease usually covers a longer, fixed term, like 1 year, while a rental agreement is often month to month. Each has its own advantages and disadvantages, so it's important to know which one you're signing. Let's look at a typical residential lease. It will include the address of the property, names of all tenants, the monthly rent, security deposit, and rules about pets or guests. It may also specify who pays for utilities and what happens if rent is late. Reviewing a sample lease can help you understand what to expect. A commercial lease is more complex than a residential one. It may include details about permitted business activities, signage, and maintenance of common areas. Commercial leases often have longer terms and may require personal guarantees. Understanding these differences is key for business owners. Vehicle leases are common for cars and trucks. The agreement will specify the make and model, monthly payment, mileage limits, and what happens at the end of the lease. It's important to understand all terms, especially fees for excess mileage or wear and tear. Lease agreements must comply with local, state, and federal laws. These laws protect both landlords and tenants, setting minimum standards for things like habitability, notice periods, and anti-discrimination. Always make sure your lease follows the law to avoid legal trouble. Habitability means the property must be safe and livable. Laws require landlords to provide working utilities, safe structures, and a clean environment. If a property doesn't meet these standards, tenants may have the right to withhold rent or break the lease. Always check that your lease includes habitability clauses. Landlords cannot discriminate against tenants based on race, religion, gender, or other protected categories. Lease agreements must comply with fair housing laws. If you believe you've been discriminated against, there are legal resources available to help. Most leases require written notice before ending the agreement or making major changes. The lease will specify how much notice is needed, such as 30 or 60 days. Failing to give proper notice can lead to penalties or legal issues, so always follow the rules outlined in your lease. Some leases require tenants to carry renter's insurance or liability coverage. This protects both the tenant's belongings and the landlord's property. The lease will specify the type and amount of insurance needed. Make sure you understand and comply with these requirements. The lease agreement will specify who is responsible for paying utilities like water, electricity, and internet. Sometimes, the landlord covers certain services, while other times, the tenant is responsible. Clear terms about utilities help prevent confusion and disputes. Some leases include furnishings and appliances, while others do not. The agreement should list any items provided, such as refrigerators, stoves, or furniture. Knowing what's included helps you plan your move and avoid misunderstandings about what stays with the property. Tenants may want to make changes to the property, like painting walls or installing shelves. The lease will specify what alterations are allowed and whether landlord approval is needed. Always get permission in writing before making any changes to avoid violating the lease. Landlords have the right to enter the property for repairs or inspections, but must give notice as specified in the lease. Tenants also have a right to privacy. The lease will outline when and how the landlord can enter, balancing both parties' needs. If disagreements arise, the lease may specify how disputes are resolved. This could include mediation, arbitration, or going to court. Knowing the process in advance can save time and money if issues come up during the lease term. If either party fails to meet their obligations, the lease will outline what remedies are available. This could include paying damages, terminating the lease, or other legal actions. Understanding these terms helps both parties know what to expect if something goes wrong. Every lease agreement will specify which state's laws govern the contract. This is important because landlord-tenant laws vary by location. Knowing which laws apply helps you understand your rights and obligations under the lease. A lease agreement is not valid until it's signed by all parties. Signatures show that everyone agrees to the terms. Make sure you keep a copy of the signed lease for your records, as it's your proof of the agreement. Today, many leases are signed electronically. Digital lease agreements are just as legally binding as paper ones, as long as they meet legal requirements. Electronic signatures make the process faster and more convenient for everyone involved. Leasing property in another country adds extra complexity. International lease agreements must comply with local laws and may need to be translated. If you're considering an international lease, consult a legal expert familiar with the country's regulations. When a lease term ends, tenants and landlords may choose to renew the agreement. The renewal process can involve signing a new lease or extending the existing one. It's important to discuss renewal terms in advance to avoid gaps in tenancy or misunderstandings. Before ending a lease, follow a checklist to ensure everything is in order. This includes giving proper notice, cleaning the property, returning keys, and settling any outstanding payments. Completing these steps helps ensure a smooth transition for both parties. Inspections at the start and end of a lease help document the property's condition. Both parties should be present and agree on any damages or issues. These inspections protect both the landlord and tenant when it comes to returning the security deposit. Keep copies of your lease agreement, payment receipts, and any correspondence related to the property. Good record keeping helps resolve disputes and provides proof if legal issues arise. Store these documents in a safe place for easy access. If you have questions or concerns about a lease agreement, don't hesitate to seek legal advice. Lawyers or tenant advocacy groups can help you understand your rights and obligations. Getting expert help can prevent costly mistakes and ensure a fair deal. To wrap up, a lease agreement is a vital document that protects both landlords and tenants. Always read the lease carefully, understand your rights and responsibilities, and keep good records. If you're ever unsure, seek professional advice. With the right knowledge, you can enter any lease agreement with confidence and peace of mind.